Well, let's bring in Mona Eltahawy on this issue, because as Jamie said, that perhaps this would have been acceptable a week ago, but it is not now. One of the things that Nasser Widadi, who's an activist, just told us is that because now the people that are out on the street feel 300 plus people have died for this, and now we can't, there is no going back.
A main demand all along has been that Mubarak step down, and then not just Mubarak step down, the entire regime step down. So people don't feel that Mubarak has ceded all his power. People don't feel that anything has been achieved, and they're very upset that not only did he not step down yesterday, but he said, I've ceded some of my powers to Omar Suleiman, the vice president. So in Tahrir Square, people were saying, you know, we wanted to get rid of Mubarak. Now we have two Mubaraks. Now we want to get rid of two Mubaraks. So as far as they're concerned, the regime is still very much there.
So if Mubarak left the country, they'd still be in the street chanting, get rid of Suleiman, basically?
The regime. Mubarak doesn't have to leave the country. He just has to step down. This has been a main demand all along. And I think where the United States comes in now is the moral standing of the United States, because as Jamie mentioned, $1.3 billion, a third of the armed forces budget in Egypt comes from the United States. But just as importantly, on the Hill, you have lobbyists who get tremendous amounts of money from the Mubarak regime that basically end up opposing any kind of bill that the Congress tries to pass to push for democratic reform in Egypt. So you have something here in the US that we can actively do. We can talk to these lobbyists and say, you know, whose interest do you represent? Clearly they represent the Mubarak regime interest because they get so much money from them. But if the United States wants to have any kind of moral standing in the Arab world, where, remember, we're seeing a generation of young people who are choosing peaceful, non-violent resistance and who are saying, we are not going to be violent. This is a turning point for the region. This is a message to young Arabs across the region that peacefully you can have freedom and dignity. Surely this is a message that the US administration wants to support.
All right, Mona and Jamie, you all don't go too far here. We're going to get to our correspondent here in a moment. But Mona, before you take off, I wonder if on this live picture, can you help us? You know Cairo, you know it well. We're trying to make out, trying to get a good point of reference, quite frankly, of where this is. We've been talking so much about the square and talking so much about that. We've been using the museum down there sometimes as a point of reference. But can you give us a good idea of exactly where this area, what we're looking at here?
This is just Tahrir Square, and people have basically just taken it over. I mean, the pro-democracy demonstrators call it the liberated zone of Tahrir Square. I mean, this is kind of the revolutionary language they use. And just to give you an idea of what Tahrir Square is, when I was there as a university student, I was at the American University in Cairo. This square was the most intimidating trying to cross, because it was so full of cars and people, and to see it like this, where, you know, your screen is basically full of people, is just breathtaking. It's one of the busiest squares in Cairo, and it's been totally overtaken by pro-democracy demonstrators.
We understand there's medics set up. I mean, you see these makeshift camps and tents, latrines. I mean, it seems to me that this would be very, very difficult to disrupt if the police or the army were trying to, in some way, disrupt this.
Absolutely. It's like a small nation. It's like a microcosm of a nation, because you have a field hospital, you have people who are like the security, who protect people against any outsiders. I have friends who have flown in from Denmark, Egyptians, who flew into Tahrir Square to tend to the wounded in these tents. So you have this amazing kind of picture of what these people want Egypt to be, where it's, you know, it's like civil society in Tahrir Square, and it's telling Mubarak, it's sending a very potent message. Look what we're doing here, very non-violently, very peacefully. This is the Egypt we want, but you're standing in our way.